Somebody call a doctor because bad medicine is back. That's the answer. This is the Appleton Oak. I'm Mason Quinn. Folks, today we are diving back into the world of Band of Brothers. We're taking a look at the documentary, We Stand Alone Together, The Men of Easy Company. This is one that many of you recommended. And as a surprise, this is one I have not seen despite seeing the series multiple times. So I'm excited to check this one out.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the series. It was very well done. I am ready, willing, and able to learn more about the Men of Easy Company.
Yeah, the series, as everybody had said it was arguably the greatest television series of all time, if not, I don't think anybody can say it's not up there in the discussion, but as far as I'm concerned, I'll go ahead and comfortably say it's the best. We learned so much about not just World War II, but the personal stories of the men that were there, boots on the ground, their bravery, their heroism, and so to be able to follow up, I'm really excited about this one.
All right, without further ado then, let's go!
I was standing on the top of this hill at the aid station, and a random shell came in. And the next thing I knew, I was laying on the ground in the snow, and when I tried to get up, only thing I could see were the broken ends of my legs.
Oh my God.
My legs were gone. Because that's all, the broken part, both femurs were shattered. And they were
femurs, oh my God.
I was in my back trying to raise my legs up, and I thought, I'm dead. I'm about to die. And I said my act of contrition, because I'm a Catholic. And then the next thing I thought of was my mother. And I thought, what's she going to say? Because I was an only child.
Oh, it hit you hard right away.
Yeah.
So I found out talking to my brother, my grandpa was a paratrooper.
Okay.
In 1947 when he joined.
Very cool to learn.
Yeah.
My name is C. Carwood Lipton. I was born in Huntington, West Virginia. Grew up in Huntington.
Born in a town named Inchelium, Washington. It's on an Indian reservation up in northeastern Washington.
My name's J.B. Stokes. I was born close to Bonham, Texas, in a rural area called Leonard.
Born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. My father worked for this railroad. My mother was a housewife.
My nickname was Babe.
There he is.
She's a little Irish brother. Redhead, fiery. Great woman. Great woman.
Born and raised in South Philadelphia, where the times were tough. Mom had 10 children, so you had to work to survive. That's what it was. It's just survival in the streets of Philadelphia, that's all.
My father was able to find some kind of employment. We never went hungry.
We lived on a farm at the time. It was poor. Everybody was poor. That was a depression.
When I got to about 10, I got a paper route. That $5 a month I made, something like that,
On December 7th of 41, we were in a store, and a guy, he says, the USA is in a war with Japan, and everything just went silent.
I said, let's go in the Army. He said, hell, I don't want to go in no Army. I said, well, you're going to have to go sooner or later.
I wasn't going to be in the infantry, I knew that. I was going to be in some top kind of a unit, or I wasn't going to be in the Army.
Life magazine had run an article on paratroopers, and it told about the training that they got and the difficult physical requirements. And I just got interested in seeing if I couldn't become a paratrooper.
You know these people that you're in service with. I mean, you know them right down to the final thing, That comes when you start your training, while that progresses.
I like how they're bouncing around from, all the different men.
Yeah, and giving some more of their backstory and where they came. Yeah.
Out of 100%, only 10% made it.
I thought I was going to die.
wasn't no holding back.
You had to hang in there. You had
That training.
118 miles in 3 days.
The train
Oh,
and the men I trained with
oh,
gave me the confidence to go into battle.
gosh, and the level of equipment they had, like, man.
And a lot of the training was to build you up physically and mentally.
Some of them lost as much as 40 pounds, but I didn't have nothing to lose. I weighed about 130. If I'd have lost 40 pounds, I wouldn't have been big enough to stay.
You know, they weeded out so many.
Oh, that's Buck.
Yeah.
They couldn't keep up with it. You understand? They were good men, but they couldn't take that hard training. Well, he had the cream of the cream, the cream.
Yeah, the cream of the cream.
Every morning, run it up and back. If you couldn't do it, why, you'd end up in another unit.
Of course, the name Currahee, as I understand it, means we stand alone together. That's an Indian name. It became a symbol of the camp because it was really rough and tough going up and down.
A lot of times, especially on a Monday, when some of the guys would get out somewhere and get them a little drink or so.
And it didn't matter how hard they trained you and how tired you got, you would still go out on your own and run the mountain at night, which was ridiculous because when you had to run it during the day, all you did was bit. And at night, they'd get a couple of guys and go up and do it on your own.
I'm going to say this. I believe the paratroopers of the 101st Airborne Division was as well trained as you could get a soldier to be at that time.
We packed our own chutes for the first jump.
Nervous as hell getting on a plane.
You're asking yourself, what the hell am I?
Is this going to work?
Stand up and hook up. We did.
Coming down is great.
It affects everybody.
Coming out as
We're dropping 16 feet a second.
I can remember just like it was yesterday. That morning after breakfast, they marched us all out there to the after unit.
How could he have breakfast? Oof.
There was a bunch of guys out there that already made their jump, and they was all hollering, "You're gonna be sorry."
Because all these other guys are right there with you, and your bravado and all that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in those days, jumping out of an airplane is not like today. My first flight up, I jumped. I was years before I ever landed in an aircraft, and most of the fellow troopers was the same story.
It seemed like when you step out the door, well, the chute just opened right then.
As I went out the door, I was blank. I cannot remember until after the chute opened up. My God. But after that, it wasn't as bad.
What a thrill. It was just like going on a roller coaster. You get off and you want to go right back on again. Yeah.
It was a high, as they say. Everybody just seemed to enjoy themselves. They went up. The landing was the hardest part.
Coming down is great. I was small, too, and I didn't hurt myself when I hit the ground. Some of the big ones hit the ground like a ton of, what's the name?
The thing you worried about most was your chute. Did you pack it right?
Oh, yeah.
You pack it one day and jump the next day. You had all night to think about it.
Oh, boy.
We made 5 jumps, and then you were a qualified paratrooper. Got your wings pinned on, became one of the elite members of the parachute.
The men were trained, hardened, physically and mentally, and they were ready to jump. Thus, we started off for Normandy.
15 months.
Oof. Wow.
When you walk up that gangplank, you know you're gone. As you pull out of harbor and you pass the Statue of Liberty, will I ever be coming back? I don't know.
Ooh, 12 days at sea.
We did not know where we were going to jump until we were locked in. And then they had the briefing to tell you exactly what your mission was.
We had confidence in our leaders and all the plans and preparations that had taken place before the invasion site. We were confident and calm.
That's amazing that they were calm before all of this. But I suppose you did all the training. All that's left to do is to jump.
Yeah.
All loaded down to the gills. We carried everything that we thought we could carry in the line of personal items, plus the necessary things we were assigned to carry, and we were loaded.
Jesus, imagine running, carrying all that stuff.
I was scared too, but probably in a different way that other people were. As long as I was in that plane and they were going to get me there safely out of that plane, that's all that I worried about.
At the time, I had no feeling whatsoever. Like I said, my feelings was for my brother who was killed. That infuriated me to no end. And that's when I jumped on D-Day, I swore I was going to kill every damn German I came across. And that's why I think they nicknamed me Wild Bill, because I did a lot of killing D-Day.
Oh.
Wow.
The sky was pretty clear coming across the channel. So since I was jump master, I could lie in the door, at the door of the plane with my head out in the slipstream looking down. And I saw the thousands of crafts.
Oh, wow.
We rode for about an hour and a half, I guess, before we went down off the south end of England and then across the Jersey Islands and then across the Cherbourg Peninsula. And that's when the fireworks started.
Wow.
Oh.
And I jumped up on a run and hit the static line with the hook and out the door, you know, and got such an opening blast, it broke this chin strap that we had on this helmet liner, and that's when I lost this famous leg bag that everybody talks about.
The British come up with this. They call them leg bags. They got to be this big, and you keep stuffing everything you can get your hands on in them. It's supposed to weigh 10, 15 pounds. By the time you get done, it's 40 or 50 or 60.
Wow. Huh.
Most of the paratroops that landed didn't have nothing.
I was one of them. It tore right off because we jumped at speeds of 150 miles.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Wow.
And lower than we should have been, but that wasn't bad either because
you gotta get, yeah, I was gonna say.
Look to see if my parachute was open, you could see tracer bullets burning holes through the parachute.
And they told us that all you'll have to do is shuffle up to the door, throw that leg out, prop blast will hit it, and you're gone. Well, they were right. Only I was gone out and my leg was in, and I was hanging, looking at everything down with my leg in the plane and everything. And all this happened in just a split second. And Paul rolled me out. Paul Rogers rolled me out.
I just helped him out.
The next thing is that you are getting close to landing and you're saying, there's some trees, there's a road.
I hit the ground in a kind of a field, and we were way got looking at my map, and we wasn't anywhere close to where we were supposed to be. We didn't know where we were. We was plumb off our maps that they'd give us. We had to make our way back. We knew that the beach was to the east of where we were, so we headed that way to get down to the beach to find out where the outfit was.
And then there I was with a trench knife and a canteen and about 6 candy bars in my pocket, ready to fight.
Oh, jeez. Oh, man.
Whereas on the beach, those people coming in on those boats, those Germans had those big guns aimed right at them, you know, and just waiting on them.
These guns were pointed and firing right down on the beach.
This battery of 105s was placed precisely where it should be to protect that causeway, any troops coming up the causeway. As you sit back years later on and look at it, you think, this was laid out exactly right. Mm-hmm. We thought we knew where every foxhole was in Normandy. We knew where everything was. We knew it cold. The Germans had moved in there and camouflaged us so well, we didn't know it was there.
Oh, this is that opening scene that's so famous.
We were been trained from special assaults and whatnot, special assignments. They weren't aware of what we had. They didn't realize we only had 12 people. So we worked our way down through the farm area to a hedgerow, and Lieutenant Winters had us set up a firing position.
I divided the group into 2 units. Lieutenant Compton was with me. I gave him half the men, and I took half the men. Gave instructions. I want Compton, Malarkey, and Winda crawl up there and hand grenade that machine gun. crawl through the grass. And as you throw your grenades, I'll charge up with the rest of the guys. 2 machine guns set up to give him covering fire.
I get out to this hedgerow, I look up and I peek through the bushes and I see a couple of Germans over here about 30, 50 yards away. So I pull out a hand grenade and I pull the pin on it and I threw it as high and as far as I could. Had enough hang time on it that about the time it got to them, it went off in the air and I got one of them.
Then I jumped.
Wow.
3 Germans broke off from this position to run across the field, which was the wrong thing to do from their viewpoint. We cut them down.
And I was trying to scuttle my way out of the way of it and it went off. And I felt like it blowed my butt over my head. And pretty near did.
He's behind. Does he holler help? No. He hollers, I'm sorry, Lieutenant.
I felt like I kind of let him down, but, you know, that's neither here nor there.
It's beautiful when you think of a guy dedicated to his company, that he apologizes for getting hit. But that's the kind of guy he was, and that's the kind each one of them was. They were all the same. I look upon them, each man with great respect. We've been through Normandy. We've been through battle. And maybe if I had been harder, if I had done a little bit better job, there would have been a couple more men going home.
That's a lot of weight to carry.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
There's the parachute. We got that done in Edinburgh, Scotland, 1944. Me and Johnny Martin. Drunk as a skunk. It was a Sunday afternoon.
The drop was perfect. It was a mass drop. Everybody was dropping on the same field.
Daytime drop's a lot easier. You can see where you're going. You can sort of prepare for the landing.
Jesus, look at that.
Plowed field, and I slipped right over it, and I believe I almost landed standing up, soft. A great jump.
The most dangerous part about it was the fact that people are continually losing helmets and equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Lean down. And if you got hit with this, you're going to be killed or wounded before you get off the drop.
Wow, never even thought.
Yeah, wow.
Our mission was first to take a bridge over the Wilhelmina Canal.
It took us hours to get there. And taking hours to get there, the few German troops that were to secure this bridge had plenty of time to set their charges to blow the thing up.
And just as we got to it, 50 yards away, it blew up in our faces.
These rocks and timbers were flying, and they're falling all around you. What a way to die in combat, to be killed with a flying timber.
It delayed us until the next morning. We wanted to get across that night. It took us till the next morning to get across. But once we got in, the Dutch, it was just marvelous. Their reaction. They loved Americans and still do.
They call us angels from the sky, which we were. I mean, you're under German occupation for 4 years. Horrible. When you see paratroopers come out of the sky on Sunday morning.
Their welcome was unbelievable. They couldn't restrain how happy they were to see you.
And it was hard to even get down the streets because the people were out there swarming all over us trying to congratulate us for being there and all that.
And they hugged you and kissed you, and we didn't mind.
We had a lot of fighting in that area. We're sitting right on the Rhine River, and Germany's right across the river,
It's called the island. We call it the island. And we set up positions there, had some substantial battles there.
During the daytime. And at their will, they could shell us, put mortar fire on us when they had a target of opportunity.
Jesus.
Town of Foy. Oh, this is definitely the area. This is definitely. Well, there's the town of Foy right over there after the empty field where those cattle are grazing. About half a mile away to be.
Yeah, we had
an outpost set up. And they had to watch everything going on because we'd come in here and go to sleep. We had our foxholes right over here and the other area, wherever we had to move out and dig in again. Of course, the Krauts had plenty of artillery.
Most intense I went through right here, shelling. You couldn't believe it. You had to be here.
You just dove in the hole and just pray. That's it. If it comes in, you ain't going to know it.
You ain't going to know it.
We lost Muck and Pentella over on this side. They were killed instantly.
Shovel.
Direct hit, 88.
Direct hit right in the hole.
Georgie Ludge come over and he hollered, I can't see nothing of them. There's nothing there. They were all gone, just disintegrated.
Unmerciful shelling, really. Everything I think was shredded. Yeah, shredded. To me, it brings a lot of memories. The memories of the men, the times, good and bad. A lot of memories.
I can't believe they got him back into the woods there by Foy. That's wild.
It was the most miserable place I've ever been in my life. We go to bed, and my wife will tell you that the first thing I'll say is, I'm glad I'm not in Bastogne.
Germans wanted to get Bastogne because of the road network. That's why it was such an objective. So that's where we had to hold, which we did.
318 trucks come in around noontime, and by that evening,
we were short of equipment. We didn't have enough ammunition.
We went down and loaded on the trucks, and another truck came by with weapons, and they pitch weapons up to the truck. You catch a weapon, that's what you got until you got to Bastogne.
When we got there, we saw men singly and in twos and threes working their way back, some of them even without weapons.
They were beat to a nub, and every one of them were telling us, they're going to kill everybody.
We marched through the night and went up to the forward side of Bastogne and dug in, and then it snowed.
Snow, cold up to your rump.
That's Bull, huh?
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time we've seen him, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. You can always dig a hole and get out of sight, We dug plenty of those.
You'd be surprised how quick you can get through that hard ground when somebody's shooting at you and them shells are falling. Now, you can make fast work of it.
No matter where you looked around the circle, you could see artillery flashes.
Well, we went through a couple shellings at Bastogne that were earth-shaking. If you lived through them, you remember them for the rest of your life.
There was one moment there that I remember vividly. I'll never forget it. One of the guys got hit in the arm with a piece of shrapnel, took his arm off. They were taking him out. He said, get my wristwatch off my arm. And before they took him out. That always stayed with me. I mean, a calm voice and everything, get my wristwatch off my arm.
They knew where we were, and they started shooting point-blank 88s into our area.
They were letting us have it, everything. From the kitchen sink mortars, Erfelwaffers, that's a rocket thing that's a screaming sound.
Oh.
I thought the whole world was shooting at us at once.
Wow.
Foxhole that somebody had started and then hadn't finished. So I was crouched down in that foxhole, and I could see all these shells hitting.
Sergeant Garnier lost a leg, and Joe Toy lost a leg in the same place right there on one hill.
He got hit real bad, the back and the leg. And he's out there and how a medic, and he can't find a medic.
I went over to Garnier. He was sitting on the ground. His leg was badly mangled. He was holding his leg, and it was jerking like that. He said, Lip, they got old Garnier this time. He had been hit before, but they really got him there.
I better not talk about him. They're terrible.
We had lost some very good men there. A number of other people were killed. It was a difficult situation there.
And when we had a man who was killed, we found that he was at peace, and he looked so peaceful.
We had this assistant squad leader, and I overheard him talking one time. This was in Bastogne. He says, Normandy, and I went through Holland, and to this day, he says, I haven't got one scratch. He says, I'm afraid when I do get it, I'm really going to get it. And he was right. In this little town of Foy, he got killed.
It is a great personal honor for me to be here today to take part in a ceremony that is unique in American history. Never before has a full division been cited by the War Department.
The Germans had started to surrender. They still had their arms, but as you're going down the Autobahn, there was almost a solid line of Berchtesgaden. It's the end of the line. It's the retreat that Hitler had for himself, and he built his eagle's nest, his penthouse, on top of the Alp with his staff, because they all followed him to Berchtesgaden. This was their final retreat. And of course, this is where they had their loot as well. This was the goal of the French, who were on our right flank.
Hitler's Berchtesgaden retreat, burned by SS troops in the war's last days. American Air Force's pictures show the huge gutted rooms and the great window through which the Fuhrer gazed out on the Alps.
It was a beautiful country. He knew how to pick out a good spot for a house. Took over his house and liberated it.
A loot of all kinds that the men were looking for, such as guns. There was money that they were looting.
I was a pack rat anyway. I picked up a lot of German items, including some postcards and envelopes that were addressed to Hitler.
Holy shit.
That place was full of this big art, you know, Rembrandt and all those people, you know. Old soldiers like us, we don't recognize a painting when we see it.
The 1st Airborne Division uncovers Hermann Goering's personal art collection, hidden in a subterranean chamber. 1,200 artworks worth untold millions are included.
Oh.
Go back to rightful owners in pillaged nations.
We found a warehouse full of gin. Wasn't much whiskey. Those people don't like whiskey. And we took it all and set up a bar.
Had 7 truckloads of champagne and cognac out of the... So we stayed pretty well oiled.
I went to the barracks, went to sleep. I didn't wake up the next day. I made a 2-day up.
Oh.
Didn't taste like it would hurt you. It tastes like ginger ale.
That was the only time that I can ever remember that when I was in service, that the whole company fell out in their underwear. We didn't even have to dress, you know. So everybody was pretty well looped.
And I had seen what the Germans had done to the Jewish race, and I'd seen what they had done to the displaced persons, and what they had done to their occupation in Holland, Belgium. So that by taking over their homes for a few nights to bed down my men, and if they picked up a few trinkets, I had no problem. Nobody has ever taken the time to tell you how to handle a surrender. We'll talk about that when we get there. Well, here we are, we got it. Now, how do you handle this?
The German army was a well-disciplined army, and they came down in formation. They marched down. They didn't drag down, you know, or nothing like that.
I think we thought that the Germans were probably the evilest people in the world. As the war went along, we found out also that it wasn't the Germans per se. It was the SS and the special troops. They were the ones that could kill their own people. And
those prisoners handed me this little book I could have, and I looked at it, and it was a little Catholic prayer book for the Mass. And all of a sudden, I'm faced with the thing, hey, I haven't got Nazis here, I got some Catholics. And I've got a Catholic good enough to stick one of these in his pocket.
When it reached the level of surrender for company and smaller units, I was assigned this major. And when he walked in, he presented me this pistol and offered his personal surrender, which naturally I accepted gratefully.
that I realized this pistol had never been fired. There was no blood on it. That's the way all wars should end, with an agreement with no blood on it.
We didn't come home and flout ourselves. I didn't come home and, I was a war hero or anything. I just come home and went back to like we did before we went. Just go to work and live our life.
I went to work where I was working before the war. It was Caterpillar Tractor Company.
I became an industrial arts teacher and a social studies teacher. The spring of '46, I took a boat to Ketchikan, Alaska.
I've been there.
A letter carrier for 37 years.
I built homes. I went into construction. I went into hard work, tedious work. I'd done everything. You name it, I'd done it.
He sounds like he would be that type of person. He would do anything he could.
I want to welcome each and every one of you to our banquet tonight to celebrate the ending of a fine reunion. And I want to extend the best wishes to all the men from Company E506.
The purpose the reunions serve is just to give us a chance to get together and talk to each other. Great respect, and you might say affection. The type of affection that you get when you've lived through many dangerous situations together.
If you see the people today, that bond's still there. The bond you can't explain. As soon as you see them, you know you're thinking of battles and thinking of it to yourself. The men staying.
There's an intimacy develops like nothing that I've ever experienced anywhere, not in college, not in with any other group of people.
We're a strange bunch of dudes.
We had a lot of real good times in there. And those are the times that you really remember, That's, a lot of those is what we're kidding each other about, at these reunions a lot of times. My family didn't know anything about it, and I just didn't tell them.
It was like that was another life.
I really admire my daddy. I've been to France and to that cemetery. There's crosses upon crosses upon crosses and just lined up perfectly as far as the eye can see.
These were people that I knew, and I told my daughter, I said, this guy here died at age 19 or 20.
When I went there, I said, Dad, my gosh, Dad, you were so lucky. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, I'm very lucky, and he started crying.
These guys have been with each other in the absolute base experiences of human existence. They were there with each other, knowing you're going to die or thinking you're going to die or seeing people dying all around you. And there they went day after day. And 506 PIR, 101st Airborne Division, that's what he wanted on his tombstone. It meant that much to him.
How it happened that those various individuals happened to end up in E Company, I don't know. But as you know, every Army unit thinks it's the best.
How would you like to be a mother or a father whose son never come back? The son and the mother and father are the heroes of the Second World War. Not the guys that come home.
I cherish the memories of a question my grandson asked me the other day. Grandpa, were you a hero in the war? Grandpa said no, but I served in a company of heroes.
Joe Toy, oh, there was a big Mick.
Jeez.
Beers at night, and I'd sing, and Garnier would try to come over and sing. He'd say to Garnier, Garnier, you're Italian, you don't know this song. Garnier could sing it better than he did. Bridget O'Flynn. Bridget O'Flynn, where have you been? Sure it's a fine time. You went to see the big parade, me eye. Sure. If you know anyone that owns a canoe, I'm telling you, Bridget, just what to do. Stay away from the water, Bridget, darling. Now that's... You only needed a sissel of beer.
Nice way to end it with that.
Yeah, what a voice he's got.
Yeah, he's got a very nice voice. I was hoping they'd maybe have Ganir come in and sing as well, because I thought that'd be really nice to see. But yeah, this was amazing.
That was a great way to end it. You know, to give us a little bit of happiness and a little bit of levity at the end, because of course we did see we saw the finish with Winters and reading the letter and his grandson, and it was good that they had to finish there with Babe doing the song. So I really enjoyed that. Again, this was a first time watch for me. I had seen the Band of Brothers series multiple times, but never saw this. So this was, again, just a completely new viewpoint on some stories that through the series we got to learn about, and this was actually hearing it from the men who were there. Of course, we had the little bits in the beginning of the episodes, some at the end, where they would give kind of a brief story about it from each one of the individuals. But this one was done in a very nice way that kind of told us a little bit about the lives they lived after the fact, which was great to see, the upbeat attitudes that so many of them had. Obviously we know that wasn't the case with everyone, unfortunately, but it sounds like the majority of them obviously did well and have these great stories to tell and things that should definitely never be forgotten. But it always hits different when you're hearing it, directly from the person that was there. I mean, you feel like you're in the room with them and they're telling you a story, and it's just a totally different experience. One that it's different than a series that was done so well that, again, so many of the times in that series we said we felt like they were bringing us in and felt like they drew us into the scene, and that we were there with so many of the great action scenes they had, and as well as a number of the emotional ones. And this definitely gave you that feeling as well. I mean, you could feel the emotion coming through the screen, and I'm sure it'll probably make the cut. I know all three of us probably had our moments as well. It's never the things for me anyway, when I'm watching these great guys tell their stories, it's never the things that I expect to really get me a little bit. It might be something about them talking about coming home and talking with their kids about something, or what they did for a job now and kind of how they enjoyed life. Or I really liked Shifty and his stories. I mean, that guy, I feel like I could just sit and listen to him talk for hours with that with that accent and everything. And so I really enjoyed his stories, as did all of them. But and it's never the things you expect to really get you. So I really enjoyed that, and getting to hear them talk about jumping out of the planes and that night jump, that was just incredible to hear how they're talking about. You basically just stuck a leg out and away you went, and just kind of hope for the best. You didn't know where you were going to land or where you were going to end up. And they talked about the situations they landed in. Some men didn't have anything other than, maybe a boot knife or something like that. And then, what do you have? A knife and 6 candy bars was all.
Yeah,
all he landed
one had
with.
that in a canteen.
Yeah, in a canteen. So you never know how it's going to work out. And you try to compare that to what we have now. Like, you think about because what did they say? They did like 100 and some odd miles they had to march in a number of days, I think it was. And again, they're not doing that in like Nike Air Max shoes that are, prepared to handle that. You're doing that in 1940s era combat boots. The fact that you're even able to do that, and that you just didn't have massive blisters on your feet and not able to walk. I mean, that's the thing that, going through and watching this, I know I touched on it a bit on some of the series, but the equipment and the gear that the men had, I mean, the boots and pants that certainly weren't waterproof when they were in the snow. And we just think of all the technology we have now. Even the stuff you can find at your local camping store is going to be light years above anything these guys had to work with. And that's just, and you touched on it too, Oak, when they're first getting into the planes, just the sheer bulk of everything they had, 30, 40 to 60 pounds of gear in those leg bags, and everything was canvas and heavy and bulky, and just, you think of the space age stuff we have now. It's incredible. So that's something that I think is important to remember when they're talking about, in addition to multiple other things, but when they talk about what they had to do and the distances that they had to cover and things like that, and thinking about the gear they had and, food, water, all these things, warm weather clothing is pretty incredible. But I'll just kind of end mine with, I'm really glad that so many of you recommended this, and I loved every minute of this. This was really good stuff. And as they showed the years there, they showed them in 1989 and 95, for example. I was surprised at how young many of them looked, but I think we forget that so many of these guys were there when they were, 16, 17, 18 years old. So, you're not that far removed from 1944 when it's like 1989. And it's wild to think about that, from where we are now here in 2024. So again, this was a massive hit, a great addition to the series, and obviously a must-watch.
Yeah, as good as the series was, hearing the stories from the men that lived it was a whole nother level. Talking about every little aspect that they can remember about it, even where they had who went there, Wild Bill, they went to the actual field in Bastogne, or the forest, and where they could look down at Foy. And so, even that, I didn't know that they were going to do that now. I was kind of hoping that maybe more at the end, that when they're doing the reunion, where they'd have to sit down with all the men there, and so they could all, and I didn't want them each talking to the camera. I just wanted them talking amongst themselves, or even reliving memories and stuff like that, just for even more, to be even more immersed into it, to really get a feel for what they did. Because just listening to these guys and their thought process and what they were going through and everything was just amazing to hear, and how inspiring they were, that they're they thought if you didn't join the military, there was something wrong with you. That's how they were. You had to do your service. And recently talking to my brother, who also served, he was in the Navy, and he'll tell you too, he was in at the right time, zero conflict while he was in the Navy. But he talked to my grandpa, who I found out over the weekend was a paratrooper. And with watching this, I just saw that it said that, there was a Life magazine article on paratroopers. So, I'm wondering, did my grandpa read that same article so that he wanted to become a paratrooper as well? He enlisted in 1947, so it was right after this, and he was stationed in Japan, so after the fact. But yeah, so seeing that, and now knowing that stuff, because I didn't talk to my grandpa too much about that stuff. I didn't know, obviously I know it's different for you all, because he saw action, was involved in all this stuff, whereas my grandpa probably didn't really see too much action, and I don't know if I'd want to even ask him about that stuff anyways, but because I just, I didn't really know too much about his military background. Now that he's gone, and now after watching this, I kind of wish I would have asked him more. So it's a little regretful on my part for not asking him more and more about his service and his time, and what led him to make the decision, what he all did, what he all, wanted to do while he was in the Army. But watching this and hearing these stories, this could have gone on another 2-3 hours. I wouldn't have minded one bit. Listening to these stories and seeing their recounting on what happened firsthand is just awe-inspiring and very amazing to hear.
Yeah, this was really touching. It was great to hear more of the stories. One of the incredible things that I thought they did, of course, throughout the series was have the interviews with the guys beforehand, except I think the final episode they didn't.
I think they waited.
They didn't do that, which definitely made it hit hard. One of the things that they spoke about was the bond that you develop with these guys. And I didn't serve in the military, and I have no basis to speak on that sort of thing. But just from, I'm 44, my own personal experiences in life, it's weird. I would say probably that my friends that I had when I was, in grade school or high school were my best friends that I ever had. And I love these guys, and I know these guys better probably than I know a lot of my friends in grade school or high school, and you know, I have a lot of great college friends and friends I've made after. But there's something about going through certain life experiences with other people, you know, experiencing everything that comes along with high school, or even something as simple as, you know, playing on the same football team as somebody and practicing day in and day out and celebrating the wins and the losses. And so I think of something like that. Let's just take my high school football team and the bonds that we made just in something as simple as playing a game. And now you wonder, these men went through 15 months of training together, unimaginable things together, seeing other friends pass, being there to save each other's lives and have each other's back. And you can't even wrap your head around the bond that these guys must have. And I think the only people that could ever understand it are other soldiers. And even, I bet if you were to talk to people who are serving actively now or people who served in future conflicts, I don't know that the bond even between them would be quite the same. Of course, still an incredible bond, but quite the same. And the thing that we have to keep in mind when we're speaking of World War II is it was really a good versus evil battle, right? I mean, look, there's semantics in that discussion as well. But at the end of the day, that's how it's always going to be remembered. You had somebody who wanted to quite literally take over the entire world, who was doing awful, awful things to people, had, you know, beliefs that, you know, if you didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes, basically, you didn't deserve to be on the face of the earth. And so those guys were out there not just fighting a war together, they were quite literally fighting for the fate of the entire world. And if we looked at conflicts later, whether it be Korea or Vietnam or you know, anything after that, you know, never quite had the same feel around that. So I don't know, it's very special watching these guys talk about just their experiences, but more so when they talk about the other guys that they served with. And I think that was the really, really powerful thing that we saw here is them just talking about the other guys, especially kind of that common thing that they say, look, if you know, because we look at these guys, and everybody should look at these guys and be like, these guys are, you know, the definition of heroes. And when you ask them, they say, no, we're not.
Yeah.
The heroes are still over there. That's where they lost their lives. Or even, you know, somebody said, look, the parents of the kids who were lost. You know, I have a 4-year-old son, and, you know, I can't imagine what the parents went through sending their sons off to war. I mean, you know, it's another experience where I have to imagine, I shouldn't say I have to imagine, I know that unless you've been in their shoes, you know, knowing your son is going over to battle and not knowing if they're going to come back. And so to hear these guys who, like I said, are absolute heroes, downplay that and say, no, we're not. It was the men who passed over there. And the way they say it so passionately is really powerful. It's, you know, I watch these stories, and you know, there's a part of me that feels a lot of pride for my grandpa and my great uncle. There's a part of me that wishes that I could have sat down with my grandpa. My grandpa died in when I was in first grade, so he was in his early 60s. So he died pretty young, and he really didn't even talk much about at all, other than a few stories to anybody about it. So it's not an opportunity I had to sit down and talk with my grandfather about it, and nobody did, you know. And I wonder, had he lived, you know, another 20 years, at some point would he have opened up and wanted to sit down and have, you know, discussions as these guys did, you know. And my great uncle talked about it a little bit. He served at the Battle of the Bulge. He was in the Army Engineer Corps. They were part of the first successful bridge that was built over the Rhine River. That was my my great uncle's unit. But we would talk at family reunions a little bit about it, but he didn't like getting into it too much. You know, he would talk about it a little bit, and this was even when he was in his 80s. You know, he still wasn't comfortable talking about it too much, and I never know if you know, if maybe we caught him outside of family reunions, if he would have talked about it a little bit more. But he, you know, he just, I think maybe he thought it was the wrong place and time, and that, you know, it was a happy gathering.
Well, because that's what I often wondered. Like they even kind of touched on it here. Like these guys are talking about it on camera that a whole nation is going to see, and it seems like they're more comfortable doing that than talking to their loved ones
kids,
about it.
yeah, I mean,
because we saw that with Powers, right? His kids,
yeah,
they didn't know, and I think that's part of it. Like I'm sure if like someone interviewed your great uncle, he'd been more than happy, but talking to your loved ones is a totally different ballgame.
It also seems like military members, whether you have a World War II veteran and a Desert Storm veteran, they will share more than what either one of those vets would share with their family. You know, so I think amongst themselves, at least that's what I've seen. I've had family members, you know, who've served, and that's what I've seen, is that it's easier for them to talk amongst even different generation than it is with their families.
Yeah, I was at a family Christmas party at my dad's. This was probably 5 years ago, and my uncle, who fought in Korea, he was an Army Ranger, and he fought in Korea. He never really talked much about his service. He said there was two things that he would always say, kind of jokingly, and he said Hollywood is trash when it comes to war movies because they glorify it, and there's no glory. And he would always say there's no glory in taking another man's life. And his other biggest thing he would always say is there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole, which we've heard, which we've heard quite a bit. But we were at Christmas, and I don't know. I can't honestly. I can't remember how the discussion started. Whether I believe it was about some movie that was out in the theaters, and my uncle kind of jumped in and you know. He wasn't. He's still alive. So he's never been kind to Hollywood's portrayal of war. But he got into a story he told, and he teared up, and it was about his time in Korea and some of the things he had to do. And his two sons, who are my cousins, who are, you know, a little bit older in their 50s and stuff, they'd never heard those stories. They were in their 50s.
Yeah.
And it was just some random time in my dad's kitchen at a Christmas party where my uncle opened up and told a story that he'd never shared with his own two sons. And they kind of sat there in awe, and we were like, you know, it was an interesting moment. He was tearing up, and so that kind of made all of us tear up. But yeah, I mean, I think with each one of these guys, they have to either be at a point where they're comfortable enough to talk about it or not. And everybody has their own experiences. I know even, you know, guys our age have a lot of parents who are, you know, Vietnam veterans, and it's kind of the same thing. Some of them are willing to talk about it, and some not. So I mean, this was pretty brilliant. The closest I got, and this is one thing kind of a personal story I'll tell, because it was really, really special for me. On a flight to Tampa in 2015, I was getting on my plane, and there was an older gentleman with a World War II hat on, a World War II veteran's hat, and I went down and sat in my seat. You know, I said thank you for his service before we got on the plane. That was kind of, everybody should be doing that. But I went and sat in my seat, and he sat in his seat. He was a little bit further ahead of me, and these two girls came down. You could tell they were together. They were talking, and one sat next to me, and the other had sat next to him. And I said, is that your friend up there? And she said, yeah, we couldn't get seats together. I said, well, I'd be happy to switch if she wants to sit here next to you. I'd like to sit next to the gentleman with the World War II hat on. And for 3 hours on a flight to Tampa, I got to sit here and speak with this gentleman about World War II stories. And I heard, not being able to hear those stories from my grandpa and only hearing limited stories from my great uncle for 3 hours. It was just him and I, and I've never been more locked into a conversation. He was very open and talking. He served in a bomb unit. He flew in B-17s, and he got in 1943, and it was just an incredible experience. And I'll have a picture with him. I should be able to find it on my phone. Maybe we'll have Diamond Dave drop it in here. But I believe he was from Iowa, and it was just an incredible experience. And just for 3 hours, guys.
Just 3 hours.
3 hours of World War II stories, and it was incredible. We got off the plane. I shook his hand, and and it was incredible. And this kind of reminded me of that experience. But I'm really glad I watched this TV show. Again, I know it's one of those things where it's like, well, I talk about how I'm kind of into the history of World War II. I just didn't have HBO at the time, couldn't afford a subscription. When this came out, I didn't have cable. I don't know. I haven't had cable forever, but before you could, for younger audiences, and you couldn't stream it back then. You either had HBO or you didn't. It wasn't like you could then go buy it on Amazon or something like that. But yeah, this was an incredible experience watching and hearing these guys' stories. And again, everything that everybody said about this series was spot on. And these gentlemen are absolute heroes. I know they've all since passed. And there's very, very few World War II veterans left. Very few. But this was an absolute pleasure, and I don't want to over dramatize, but say an honor to watch this series and to hear the stories of these guys. So
yeah, the one thing I will say, if you've made it this far in the review, is obviously that if we were a little more quiet than normal during this series, or even this episode in particular, you got to understand from our standpoint, we're taking in their stories. I would feel horrible talking over any of these men, saying what they were doing. So again, I hope that our reaction at least is what so many of you were hoping for when you wanted us to watch this, because I absolutely loved it. And I think for the men who were involved with it, I imagine it had to bring them some level of peace that they all got to get together and tell their stories. I can imagine, they'd be talking to one another. Hey, it's your turn to go in and tell the story. Don't you go bullshitting them about, whatever. You tell them.
That'd be great if they had some behind the scenes stuff where they're giving shit to each other. That'd be great.
Working together to make this series. I bet they had a lot of fun, and it was probably helpful to them on so many different levels. So, I mean, all around, I think this was a huge win for everybody. Those who get to watch it and get to learn about it, get to see things on a different level, and for the men involved, obviously, I think it was probably helpful to them as well. So just a real treat, and definitely enjoyed this.
Yeah, this was absolutely amazing. And my favorite quote is, "No, Grandpa was not a hero, but I served with the company heroes." And I think that shone through on this series and with this great retelling of the whole story of everything they did and throughout Easy Company. So thank you for watching. Thank you, veterans, for all that has served. You've done a great service to this country, to us. We thank you immensely for it. We can't thank you enough. We really can't. So we greatly appreciate you. So for Appleton Oak, that's Mason Quinn. I'm, of course, Answer. Good night, pals.